Guzzlord has arrived in Pokemon Go, straight from Ultra Space, from November 7th until the 23rd. The Junk of War Pokemon will be in Pokemon Go. And what's interesting about this raid boss compared to most Tier 5 raid bosses is that you can actually solo it pretty easily with Fairy-type Pokemon. So in this video, I'm going to let you know some Guzzlord basics, I'm going to let you know the best counters to Guzzlord, and some details about the solo, and then I'm also going to let you know just how good it is in the raid and PvP metas. And if you're skipping some other raid bosses before, this might be one to not skip out on here. And then of course, if you want to reference any of the information in this video in a text-based format, link in the description to my article on GamePress, Guzzlord and its place in the meta. But without further ado, let's get into Guzzlord here. Right into its giant gaping mouth hole and into oblivion. Guzzlord is a Dark Dragon Dual type Pokemon, and its maximum CP at level 40 is a paltry 2,887, at level 50, 3,264. So while this isn't that big, what is big is its gargantuan, gigatongue, monster high HP stat of 440, third only to Chansey and Blissey. So think about them, but now in this monstrous giant dark dragon Pokemon, right? It's got a pretty decent attack stat too of 188, and then a really low defense stat of 99. So the low defense kind of offsets the high HP in a way, but I'd say overall the stat isn't that bad on the Guzzlord here. And what's even better is its move pool. It's got Dragon Tail and Dragon Claw, which is basically everything a dragon type Pokemon could ask for and more. And there is more. It also has Snarl, which is okay, kind of mid, but it has Crunch, fantastic, and Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing, an amazing move, locked to Hydreigon, but now available on the Guzzlord. And Guzzlord is a Dragon Dark Pokemon. It is doubly weak to Fairy-type attacks. If Fairy-type Pokemon think they're going to have it easy, they better think twice, because this thing is also packing Sludge Bomb. So I'd say Guzzlord, for the most part, is the whole package and more. So how do we beat this thing in raids? Well, good news is it's a pretty easy solo. So here I have a graph showcasing the best raid counters to Guzzlord using level 40 counters against the tier 5 Guzzlord raid boss from Pokebattler. All of Guzzlord's movesets averaged with no friendship, no weather bonuses, and no dodging. The x-axis down here is going to be the total damage output, which basically determines if you're going to have to relobby or not. And then the y-axis, the line going up and down, is damage per second, DPS, how quickly you can beat down the raid boss. And everything that's above this solo DPS line, well, I think you can imagine what that means for these level 40 Pokemon with no weather bonuses, no friendship bonuses, and no dodging, right? They can solo the Guzzlord here. So yeah, as you can tell, very easy solo. If you have like an army of Togekisses, you can get the job done pretty simply here. Shadow Gardevoir, Shadow Gramble definitely do stand out because doubly super effective to Fairy type hits. Guzzlord is. Shadow boosted Fairy type hits. Yeah, it's going to hurt it. So yeah, very, very easy, powerful Pokemon, very common Pokemon for anybody who's ever powered up Fairy-type Pokemon before to take on this raid boss. There is also some variety too. You could bring in your big Master League Zacian on top of it. Even though it doesn't have a Fairy-type fast move, Pokemon like Zacian, Tapu Koko, Tapu Bulu, they're still pretty good for this fight because they do have the Fairy-type charge moves and they are, same type attack bonus boosted Fairy-type charge moves. So they're not too bad for this fight. If you do bring the non-fairy fast move Pokemon though, I'd have them be your not lead Pokemon because the Pokemon you lead with is going to do more fast move damage compared to the other Pokemon on your team. So not doing that doubly super effective fast move damage could hold you back a bit, but it's not that big of a deal. Just lead in with your Gardevoir or Togekiss and then keep everything else in the back, right? That's like the main thing to know for a little tweaking of your DPS there. But yeah, pretty easy fight. One thing I will let you know though is that this graph is based on the average, which offsets just how devastating Sludge Bomb can be. If you are up against Sludge Bomb Guzzlord, you are going to have to relobby no matter what you bring. If you're trying to do the solo at least, I don't know, maybe Dialga survives long enough. whatever, right? Basically, yeah, expect to re-lobby against Sludge Bomb, but if you got the Togekiss army going, you probably won't have to re-lobby against anything else. So yeah, I got some other choice picks on here too, like Weather Boosted Shadow Dragons and Mega Dragons and Rayquaza. And yeah, you can see that they just kind of pale in comparison to like even non-Shadow Gardevoir. So yeah, just if you're curious about that. And this weird ball over here, that is the Pokemon Shuffle icon for Xurkitree. So that's what Xurkitree looks like. And there is no shuffle icon for Zacian or Galarian Rapidash, so that's why they look the way they do. But now that we know how to beat this thing's butt, well, just how good is it? When it comes to Guzzlord in the raid meta, I gotta say it's pretty mid. It's not bad, but it's definitely not a Pokemon you're gonna be all excited to power up. When it comes to being a Dragon-type raid attacker, because of its low attack stat, it's roughly as good as Gyarados is, like Dragon Tail, Outrage, non-Shadow, non-Mega Gyarados, which isn't like a bad raid attacker, it's just not a very good raid attacker, right? It's very okay. It's better than Aggron, right? As a dark type Pokemon, it's roughly as good as Tyranitar, which is pretty promising. I mean, it does have brutal swing, so obviously it's going to pull its way up with that. But compared to the majority of like optimized dark type Pokemon, it's not exactly there. And then when you consider the fact that dark types are always competing with ghost type Pokemon in the same kind of raid targets, it gets a lot worse for Guzzlord. So Guzzlord's pretty mid. It's not bad, but it's not exactly good. If you are a Guzzlord enthusiast, maybe wait until the shiny version comes out to go all out on the Guzzlord here. And then to add to that, it's not very good in Master League, so there isn't really like a cross utility there like there is for like, I don't know, Dialga or Zacian, for instance, where they do have like a little bit of something going on in raids, but then they got a lot of something going on in the Master League, so then you're going to pump them up anyways. Guzzlord doesn't have that going on either, so looking pretty rough. But what you lack in raids, right, you can make up for in Great League and Ultra League PvP, and oh boy does Guzzlord make up for it in Great League and Ultra League PvP. It's a really good Pokemon, and this is a Pokemon I'm definitely going to be raiding every single day that I can raid it, because I'm going to want to trade people so I can get that IV spread for the Great League. It's not at 1500 or lower at level 20, so you have to trade to get the IVs to get it into the Great League. But let's get into Great League Guzzlord. So when it comes to Great League PvP, despite having this gargantuan stamina stat here, it only has about a 1900 stat product because of its higher attack weight, right? And it also has a really low defense. So overall, really decent stats for PvP, but not like super crazy Chansey Blissey tier insano high stat product going on, right? But Guzzlord, pretty powerful. I'd say for its main role in the Great League and the Ultra League, the easiest way to visualize Guzzlord, in my opinion, is to think of it as like a dragon flavored Scrafty in a way, because both Guzzlord and Scrafty are about, you know, wailing down on opposing dark type Pokemon, and then also beating down on ghost type Pokemon, spooking the ghosts, and then also having good neutral matchups with their powerful neutral hits, right? So Scrafty having the rapid counter damage and the power up punches to accelerate that, Guzzlord having the big massive Dragon Tail with the Dragon Claw to back that up. So a pretty good neutral bruiser going on in Great League PvP. What stands out to me even more about the Guzzlord, though, is its matchup against Altaria. So basically every Dragon-type Pokemon that tries to make a name for itself in Great League PvP, outside of like a cup format, always gets reined in by the fact that Altaria is going to beat their ass, right? No matter how you slice it, Altaria is going to have an advantage over them. Some of them can overcome Altaria in the 1-1, some can overcome it in the 2-2 shield scenario, but none of them can do both. And while Guzzlord here, against this rank 1 Altaria, mind you, has that power. It has the ability to overcome Altaria in both the 1-1 and 2-2 shield scenarios, provided, of course, it has the right PvP IVs going on. So obviously this is going to warrant a Guzzlord PvP IV deep dive, because as you can tell here, Guzzlord in the Great League at level 20, which is what you catch it in raids, this is the 484. So there is going to be a bit of a narrow range of, you know, Guzzlord IVs that can make it into the Great League to begin with, and an even more narrow range that are going to have this level of optimization in the Great League. So yeah, stay tuned. Subscribe to SwagTips if you haven't already. In the coming weeks here, I will be doing the Guzzlord PvP IV deep dive to let you know your chances of getting Guzzlord good in the Great League and what those good stats are going to be for Guzzlord in the Great League. But I'd say more so than anything else, this really stands out and is really promising for Guzzlord in Great League PvP, it being able to overcome Altaria. Because when you pick a Dragon-type Pokemon, like, there is some pretty big differences between Guzzlord and Altaria, and I will say Altaria overall is the better Pokemon, more ubiquitous, bread and butter kind of Pokemon here. But if they're going to have the same role, but you're going to lose to the one that's, you know, already the bread and butter kind of pick, like, you got to be doing something extra special, and I don't feel like a lot of Dragon-type Pokemon are doing that. But Guzzlord does have some special things going on. Maybe not the greatest special things going on, but its ability to overcome Altaria, though, definitely speaks well for it. What's also pretty interesting, too, is the Froslass matchup, where you can overcome it in the 2-2 shield scenario, once again, provided you have the right IVs, right? So it can be pretty tricky to get this good Guzzlord. What's even cooler too is you can see here we're losing the 1-1 shield scenario, right? By just 4 HP. Well, what gives, right? But if you swap to your Guzzlord, let's say, and your opponent swaps in a Froslass to meet your Guzzlord, well, you're going to have a 1 fast move energy advantage. And if that's the case, then you can beat down on the Froslass in the 1-1 shield scenario. You will reach Brutal Swing before it reaches its second Avalanche. Now, this is doing it with a Dragon Claw bait, and I'm pretty sure you don't even need Dragon Claw in this situation. You can just straight Brutal Swing it. Yeah, right there. Boom, boom. And it can't catch up to you. So this Pokemon is supposed to counter swap into you, right? This is supposed to be Guzzlord's nightmare. But Guzzlord just gobbles it on down, right? No real shield pressure there. You are the shield pressure. And if they choose to shield 2 times, well, bad news for you, Froslass. It's over. So I think limiting Froslass in such a big way, too, is also a pretty big deal for Guzzlord. I'd say overall, what will hold Guzzlord back in the Great League meta is that it's not very effective against Steel-type Pokemon, and then it's also vulnerable to Fighting-type Pokemon. And if you kind of break down meta Great League Pokemon into like a dichotomy, either you're beating Steel types or you're beating counter users, right? And if you're not doing either of those things, if you're actually doing poorly at those 2 jobs, well, that doesn't speak too well for you, at least in the Go Battle League meta. But when it comes to the C6, you know, Play Pokemon Championship meta, I expect Guzzlord to be a name within the coming months here. I'm going to go months plural because people are going to have to trade to get the good IVs or it's not going to be worth it. And then you also have to get Guzzlord experience going on there too. But I think Guzzlord will be popping up in the 2023 syndicate here as one of the better picks for sure. So if you are really competitive in Great League PvP, this is definitely a Pokemon that you don't want to miss out on and you're going to want to start trading for. And when it comes to Ultra League PvP, the situation is very similar in that it is kind of like the dragon flavor of Scrafty, right? And I'd say Guzzlord is going to be a little bit more bread and butter in the Go Battle League meta of the Ultra League than it is in the Great League because, well, we got a big ghost-type Pokemon called Giratina here, which makes basically all dark-type Pokemon feel a lot better in the Ultra League, right? So Guzzlord being a dragon dark-type Pokemon, you know, being a dark-type Pokemon that's not so vulnerable against, you know, Empoleon, Venusaur, Talonflame, Mandibuzz, right? Guzzlord can hammer down those opponents which other dark-type Pokemon can struggle against, and hammers down other dark-type Pokemon that don't have counter as a fast move, basically. So I think Guzzlord will make a pretty big name for itself in the Ultra League. It's not too hard to imagine Guzzlord doing well there than it is in the Great League, imagining it in like the GBL meta kind of situation. And then to add to that, yeah, there's no trade IV pestilence going on here for Guzzlord. Of course, when I look into its IVs for the PvP IV deep dive, I will take a peek and see what there is to gain by having a trade-weighted Ultra League Guzzlord, because why not? But I think the raid weights are going to be just fine for Guzzlord here in the Ultra League. A big vulnerability Guzzlord obviously has is going to be against the counter users, which are also quite present in the Ultra League to beat down on the Dark-type Pokemon, and then also the Steel-type Pokemon that kind of run around there. And then also being weak to the Dragon-type hits from Giratina isn't that great. So like this Pokemon still is a Pokemon that beats Giratina. It is a Giratina counter. But you know, taking super effective damage from the Dragon Claws isn't so nice when like Umbreon or something could just wall it off completely. So it does have some risks, but I think Guzzlord is going to be a pretty bread and butter household name in the Ultra League soon enough here. And then finally, in the Big XL Master League, I don't think Guzzlord is worth it. Basically, it's like 2,000 stat product too short from being anything impactful in the Master League meta. And if you compare it to Dragonite, it actually loses to Dragonite in all shield scenarios, which it's freaking Dragonite, right? So if Guzzlord can't even begin to overcome Dragonite here, what's it going to do against Dialga and Zacian? You know, and you can sit back and go like, well, hey, it could beat Giratina. It's a dark type Pokemon. Mewtwo, watch out, dark type Pokemon here. But I don't think it's going to have nearly the consistency you need for it to be a XL worthy investment, especially as a raid only Pokemon. If this is something that you're into, if you love Guzzlord that much, once again, I urge you to like wait for the shiny release because Guzzlord is just not great in Master League PvP. So that's all I gotta say right now about Guzzlord here. Overall, looking like a really interesting pick for the Great League and Ultra League PvP metas, so I'm gonna be doing my best to pick up a bunch. Fortunately for me, it's a soloable raid boss, so I shouldn't have too hard of a time picking it up. Of course, if you have any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. Guzzlord here is the Junkivore Pokemon, known for eating basically everything. Cities, mountains, planets, yeah, you name it. Does it eat ass? Oh, it eats ass. It definitely eats ass.